I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Welcome, everyone. We will we'll go ahead and get started. While Brad's walking, we do have modifications to the agenda, I do believe.
Just one item. I'd like to add a supplemental personnel report to the consent agenda. It's dated today.
Very good. And that supplemental is in front of board members, I believe, in one form or another. Without objection, we will add that. And on to receiving anyone who wishes to speak has an opportunity to do that. No one did sign up. There is a sign-up sheet. Any students in the room that wish to make a statement at this time, feel free to do so. But this does not count in your grades, so you don't have to do that. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, very good. So we will move on. And student reps. Michaela.
Okay, I'm the only one here tonight because Noah's at the last boys varsity swim meet tonight. At home, at least. They have more away. So it's Regents and Midterms week in 2 weeks, which begins on January 27th. Classes will not be in session that week, and students will show up only to school only when they have exams or are attending a department-held review session. Diplomas and caps and gowns are being ordered for the seniors in preparation for graduation in late June. Cocoa and Cram, which is hosted by Ithaca High School's Link Crew, is on January 23rd, which is a study session to help freshmen study for their midterms. Green Team is hosting a recycled dress drive where students can donate dresses and then exchange them for others in preparation for winter formal, which will be on February 8th, I believe, at the Museum of the Earth. The first of the science lecture series was last week, held in H Courtyard, and it was very well attended. William Shakespeare's Star Wars: Verily a New Hope is this Thursday and Friday at 7 p.m. in LACS's Black Box Theater. And I will also be reading for Connor Coots, who is in a play and has Tech Week, which is this week of rehearsals before the debut of the play. He tried to get out of it, but he couldn't. The Tatler Literary issue is out. This brilliant documentation for student art, photographs, and prose is astonishingly impressive and must be celebrated. This is the second year that this has occurred, and we at the Tatler have been more submissive and even more published work from the students than last year. To every single being in this room, if you see the Tatler Literary issue about at all, please read it and marvel at our students' achievements in the arts of publications. It is also out where you would find agendas. The brass quintet played carols in some of the outside local shopping centers. This is quite splendid due to the fact that it shares IHS talent with the community, which is of course an ideal situation. In band news, Mr. Arthur Art Carrickner has ended his long-term substitution for Nikki Zowell, who went on maternity leave. Band students had this to say about Carrickner. For being a substitute, he was an extraordinary help, and his knowledge of music really did benefit our band to the maximum. Science Olympiad plans to attend a regional competition at Binghamton University on February 8th, 2014. The first ever Ithaca High School talent show occurred, and despite flood warnings, it was a smashing display of a pot of students with talent fiercely boiling out of it. There were riveting vocal performances that brought some audience members to tears. That's right, tears. Some instrumental performances that enchanted many, and an ever so pleasant theatrical performance. This talent show was especially riveting because it included a powerful vocalist who, because of stage fright, hadn't performed in front of an audience for 3 years. That was broken after Saturday night. So ever so appropriately, I say, huzzah.
Michaela, we do realize you're reading someone else's words.
Yes,
So.
that's all I have for Connor
Thank
and
you.
high school, and I apologize for not living up to his enthusiasm as he would have.
A budding journalist. It is also senior night for the wrestling team tonight as well, I believe, so which I am missing, and along with the swim team and everything else that I have to do. Anyway, Dr. Brown. LECS. Thanks, Michaela.
Hi, so it's the end of the semester is coming up, and Regents Week is in the next couple of weeks, and the main test that people will be taking, the 11th graders will be taking the ELA exam. family group conferences will be led by students this year, and they'll be happening during Regents Week. So family group conferences are something that we do at the end of every semester, and it's a great time for students to reflect on their own learning and for teachers to help coach them. And Parents Visiting Day is tomorrow, so parents will be visiting the school to see what students are doing in classes and visit an all-school meeting.
Also, last Friday was our annual Dr. Dave Day, which celebrates Dave Lehman. He comes and visits. He was one of the founders of the school and the first principal. And so he visited the school and spoke to the whole school, and then went around and spent the rest of the day visiting classes and providing some insight and just talking about the history of LACS. Also, Dr. Brown visited our school last week, and that was really cool. He talked to the Welcoming Allies and Mentor group, which is the group of students that kind of helps new students into the school, along with anyone else who wanted to go. And he just listened mostly. He talked about technology, but then just listened to what all the students' thoughts were. And I thought that was a really cool thing. And then senior teams, which is a senior project that all the seniors must complete in order to graduate, are finishing up right now. They'll be presenting to staff towards the end of this semester, and that is happening. That is all, I believe.
Thanks, Ed. Any board responses, comments at this time? Brad, go ahead.
Not following up on theirs, and Michaela, it's hard to follow Connor when he's here speaking, and it's hard to follow him when you're just reading it. I get it.
Try to answer your question.
He ended with huzzah, and I'll give a couple of huzzahs myself for our maintenance staff. We've had, as some of you are aware, some challenges having to do with water. In the case of some frozen pipes in the Performing Arts Center, and then also some water in the storm drains as part of the flooding issues the city had. Our staff did a great job. The pipes and all of that were repaired by our own people. Nobody from outside was needed, so that was great. That was all taken care of by our own forces. The water, they did a great job. Had pumps in the boiler room at the high school. Our friends in the city were good enough to lend us a large pump that helped dry out the parking lot driving loop at the high school. Our staff did a great job keeping track of all that, and I want to thank them for all their efforts there. I really appreciate it.
But certainly, starting Wednesday night, there was a basketball game, but they were having to work that evening, and then really right through.
Right, yeah, I went over, Wednesday night, I was here and went into the boiler room. They were already there. Already had a one pump in there. There's some underground facilities here. They already had gates closed to those, so we ended up with no damage in that regard. So really appreciate their efforts. But it went from, as you point out, from Wednesday right through Saturday.
Overnight.
Yeah, overnight. So I appreciate their efforts. It's good to have staff that'll go above and beyond.
Thanks, Brad. Judy, did you have anything?
I just wanted to ask, because I know something's coming up Thursday that I got an email about. Isn't that the lunch?
At LACS.
Yeah.
About what?
Oh, well, the email.
They have lunch every day.
I know, this is a special luncheon for outside people to come and see what's served.
This is your farm to table.
I think that's tomorrow. That's
At
with
the
the
same
visiting
time.
day.
I thought it was
I think it's tomorrow, so that it could be both days. But I think tomorrow, the idea was that tomorrow people would also be able to see an all-school meeting, which only happens on Wednesdays. So it makes sense to
It
me.
is
that
called a lunch open house, so
Yeah, okay.
whatever lunch served, and you will get a chance to see the truth.
Yeah. When is the all-school meeting? What time does that start?
11:40 tomorrow.
Seth, go.
Well, Noah's absence reminded me, I had a conversation with one of our swimming coaches the other day, and he told me about an impressive accomplishment. Several years ago, we set any of the pool records at Maine and Well. And at our last meet at Maine and Well, we completed setting the pool records for every event at that pool. So in effect, Ithaca High School owns that pool. They own every record. So just another continued kudos to the swim team and dominating pool that way, and hopefully they'll have some good results tonight as well. So
This boys swim. Can we move that pool here?
Where are they tonight?
They're swimming.
They're at home. I was just at the meet before I came over here, and senior Ryan Nicholson set the pool record, which had been there since I think like the 80s for 100. It was either 100 or 200 freestyle. And yeah, and
200 is one of the specialties as far as
it was probably 200 freestyle then. And he will be attending Duke University next year. So something like that.
Yes. Just another example of the excellence at the high school, Dr. Brown. Jay.
Actually, yeah, I have a little report from the Central New York School Board's meeting. Is
Okay,
this the right
great.
time to do this?
Sure, Jay.
I didn't see any other. I wanted to pass to the board members an invitation that the central, the superintendent has sent some of this out, and there'll be more. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's an interrupt. So it's Central New York School Board Association. That's that BOCES group that I get together with all the other representatives from the other districts that are part of BOCES. So every year we usually have Meet the Legislators breakfast. Well, they're not going to do it. Okay, that's not going to happen. They felt that wasn't as effective as they hoped this would be. And this is a different idea to try and have school board members and community members come. The most logical one for us, the one they're encouraging our BOCES members to attend, is the Auburn West Middle School Auditorium. I'm told, I'm not familiar with that school, but I'm told it's right off the main drag, easy to park. You've been there, Rob. And they're trying to encourage every school district to bring 15 people. I mean, they can be PTA parents, PTA members, school board members, community members, anyone interested in public education to attend. If you can see, the program is going to be Dr. Rick Timms. I think most of us have heard a presentation or two by him, and he's very good. And the main focus of the Central New York, the main lobbying, political, New York State focus of the School Board Association, both Central New York and the New York State, is to convince the governor and the legislature to eliminate the gap elimination adjustment. That's the main issue, is to eliminate it. And to that end, I have a little handout, and I put on the front page what the Ithaca City School District's gap elimination adjustment has been for the past 4 years. If you take a look at it, it's a nice color and shows you that if we could restore what was to be a temporary cut when we had Governor Patterson, and we were, I think there was a multi-billion, I don't know if it was 10 billion shortfall or something like that in the Albany budget, state budget. They came up with this gap elimination adjustment for all of the school districts. It affects every school district differently. This is particular to our school district. So just in round numbers, we lost almost $5 million the first year. The second year, down to about $44,700,000 in the third year. And then this year, the gap elimination adjustment is $3,355,000.
our current budget.
In our current budget,
Right.
right. The reduction is that. So the comment I wanted to make about that is that if we were to just have this money back, it would be a huge resource that would really, I think, help our school district. This is a problem facing all of our school districts, and it's, I don't know, disingenuous at best, dishonest at worst, what some of the politicians say when they say that they are increasing school aid when we are living with the kinds of cuts as illustrated here.
You're making a lesser negative.
Yes, exactly. And then to hear about funding other projects, be it worthwhile projects, be it STEM or pre-K and other programs that are touted, while they may be worthy and important, the focus that the Central New York School District and the New York State, or the Central New York School Boards Association and the New York State School Board Association is taking is to convince the governor and legislators to eliminate in 1 year, immediately, completely, the gap elimination adjustment. That is the focus. So if you were to go to the February 4th meeting, Dr. Rick Timms will make a presentation pretty much focused on that and encouraging people to come. The media is invited. So we're being tried to be promoted and be inclusive and encouraging it not just to be the school boards members there, but a greater community of interested people.
Thanks, Jay. We are talking about budget tonight. I mean, we talk about budget all the time, but certainly every meeting that we would have throughout the spring will be addressing the budget, and this is a very good representation of what we've had to budget around over the last 4 or 5 years, is what everyone else has to, every other school district also has to deal with it. But the gap elimination adjustment is not to help eliminate our budget gaps. It's the state of New York, and that's just to be clear on that. Anything else? Thanks, Jay. Appreciate that. Anything else? We're good? All right, so let's move on to the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Come here, Brad. You see it before you. Any questions? Without any questions, comments, all in favor? That's everyone. That's everyone. Thank you. So, Dr. Brown, we've been doing a few things, but now it's time for the superintendent.
You've already touched on many of the highlights I wanted to share, so
So we can just keep going.
just one item. I want to, with so many students here and the community watching, want to again bring attention to our website and the ICSD Insider. More information and content is there each day. You can find out about what's happening in the district and what's coming by looking at the Insider or our webpage. And on our webpage right now, I think if you scroll down, well, maybe it's gone. The Inside ICSD with Dr. Brown show is produced by young people. They're putting it together in our new digital media lab. And they're doing it out. Each episode gets better. The people who are leading and facilitating, myself and Parker, we're working to get better. But the young people who are behind the scenes are doing an outstanding job putting this together. And you'll see this show that's featured on our homepage now has Mr. Ellis, our transportation director. And we had planned this long in advance, but the timing is perfect, particularly with the weather that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. And when you take a look at the video, we talk about the process we go through pretty much every day when we make decisions about school. And with so many young people in the room and with the community watching, if I can take a second to talk about that process. As a student in Virginia, it did snow in Virginia on occasion. We would wake up at 4:30, 5 o'clock a.m. and we would have to watch that little ticker at the bottom of the screen. We had to sit there and watch, and they would alphabetize. If you didn't see your school show up the first time, we would just sit there and wait for another 45 minutes to see if it showed up the next time. Things have changed now. Now young people just tweet the superintendent. The day before, that morning, or when they wake up. And maybe, unfortunately, sometimes the superintendent tweets you back. But that's the difference in the day and age we are. Young people in our community want instantaneous access and want to have input into the decision. These are tough decisions. And Mr. Ellis and I, while we work hard to make the right decision on whether or not we put young people on the road or ask the bus drivers to go out, they're tough calls. don't think people realize that he and I talk pretty much every day from December to April. And every day, from the day school opens until the day school closes, I worry about buses on the highways. We travel thousands of miles every day. We transport thousands of people every day. Many, many buses, and it's a huge operation that takes place. So when he calls me every night to say our buses are in and people are safe, I'm relieved. That can be on a day when it's 85 and sunny, or a day when there's 10 inches of snow on the ground. Sometimes the weather changes, and it creates situations where folks think or have an opinion on whether or not we should be on the roads or not. We talk to the National Weather Service, we talk to the highway departments, we talk to bus drivers. Myself, Mr. Ellis, are out on the road at 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m., traveling to see if it's okay and appropriate from our perspective at that time, informed by other folks about whether or not we should come to school. And I've heard a lot over the last couple of weeks that we don't take safety into account, that we don't really make the call based on any data. It isn't true. But I want folks to know that every day I'm thinking about the safety of our young people and our staff, and it's important to us. And there is a process that we go through that's informed by data and a lot of good thinking. And sometimes we do it right by some people's perspectives, and sometimes folks aren't so happy, but there is a process. And I just wanted folks to know about that. We talked about that on the show, and Jim Ellis is an outstanding leader in that department, and our bus drivers do an outstanding job. You know, unfortunately, right now, the worst thing I hear oftentimes is there's a bus with a wheel in a ditch. That can be in October, or it can be on a day when there's snow. And that's pretty much what we've had to deal with, fortunately. And that's because our drivers are outstanding and experts, and they care about taking care of our young people and the buses that we travel on every day. So that, but again, shows like that, where we talk about that issue, and Parker's good at questioning us and asking tough questions, that and other hot topics or topics of interest are going to be featured on that show that's produced by young people. And will be in the Insider and on the website.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Brown. Is that it?
That's it.
Very good. And we'll move on to school district business and Bridget, Family Reading Partnership. Every baby, every day. A new campaign.
Don't steal the thunder.
Does it say that right on the agenda?
It does.
So this won't be such a secret preview. So good evening, everyone. And I really have to start by just saying thank you for our continued partnership. None of the things that happen around our community, the books in children's hands and all the banners and everything, couldn't happen without it. And so just very sincerely, thank you so much. It seems like at least once a year I should come in and report to you what happens out there at 54 Gunderman Road and give you a little update. And this is a special preview, and it really seems like you should have the inside scoop on this one, because we believe that this really may be the ultimate in access and equity. And it may be the silver bullet, help and be our greatest hope for really closing that achievement gap. Talk so much and we hear so much about the achievement gap, and as we all know, that achievement gap really begins long before children enter our schools. And before it's even an achievement gap, it turns out that what it is a word gap. And that word gap is so profound that at the age of 3, that the Hart-Risley study called Making a Difference in the Lives of Young Children, the study shows that at the age of 3, that some children who are in language-rich homes have heard 52 million words, and that others have heard only 13. So it's more than a 30 million word gap. And so I'll send you the study so that you have it. Numbers. But if you think about how profound that is, that children have that difference, it's really quite something. And Jim Trelease, who wrote the Read Aloud Handbook, talks about the fix. And he says that if our kindergarten teachers needed to fix this gap, they would have to talk 900 hours with 10 words a minute to be able to catch children up. So it really shows you the degree of how hard that would be. So while that divide really comes mostly along income levels, the great news is that it doesn't have to. It does not have to. Jim Trelease has a great quote. It's not the toys in the house that make the difference in children's lives. It's the words in their head. The least expensive thing we can give children outside of a hug turns out to be the most valuable: words. You don't need a job, you don't need a checking account, you don't even need a high school diploma to talk to children. So what does this mean for our own community and our own school? Every year in Tompkins County, and this year it's estimated that 934 babies will be born. And that the statistics would show us that there are 281 of those who may come home to homes where they will not hear or not often see the printed word. And so if you ask yourselves, what do we think, what would it take? What would it take for those 281 babies to hear from day one, before they're even behind, that they were surrounded by an abundance of words, an abundance of loving words? If you think you can answer that question, there is so much at stake that you have to do it. You have to feel compelled to do it, and we think we can. So that really becomes an economic imperative, it becomes a social imperative, it becomes a community imperative that we join forces around. So then comes every baby, every day, talk, read, sing, play. And I'll pass around this bookmark. We're getting ready to launch. And so you'll see banners and billboards and all kinds of ways that we're going to create a surround. And on one side of the bookmark, it has the beginning of our plan. Actually, I'll take one back. Before it goes. Thank you. Is the beginning of the plan of what we're going to do. And then on the other side is what individuals can do. So of course, even though we're just getting started, we really are going to need to partner with everyone in the community to have this be what it can be, to say very boldly that we are so committed to this and bringing people together around it, that in our community, that there won't even be one baby who misses out on hearing talking and singing and reading. So that's where we are. Already on the Friday the 24th, we're kicking off at GIAC, inviting community members to come from many different sectors of the community. We're already partnering with the Ithaca City School District, and that Dr. Lori Bruce Jawa is going to come and help be part of that launch. There are lots and lots of ways that the school can be involved in something like this, even though we're talking about babies. You could imagine that there would be board books in the school libraries that children could check out to read to their real babies or their stuffed animal babies. That all of our community, we really create a surround that will work. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. If you have any questions.
Judy Max.
No reading.
Judy Max is reading.
One of the things that we're really excited about this, where we'll begin, is we'll start by establishing a baseline. Less than 50% of people read to their children, even. There are not even any statistics on how many people read to their babies. There have never been national studies on that. You could imagine that it's much fewer than 50%. It really is it's a national embarrassment that we have known for so many years what it takes, and yet we haven't had a national campaign that promotes talking and singing and reading to babies.
Do we have doctors that ask parents if they read on the first, what do you say, the well visits, 2 months, so forth? Do they ask, or?
They do, and in fact, that message comes with a book. So So there's a book that we give out at 6 months that comes with that message that already has been being given out at 6 months. With this new and renewed commitment, we're adding a book at 2 months and 4 months. We think it's too long to wait till 6 months. Babies can't wait for words. They need them from day one. What's interesting is that doctors in giving the books, parents will often say to them, why should I read to him or talk to him? He doesn't talk yet. And so it shows you how much there is out there, how important this message is. What is the most, many parents will ask, what toy should I get? They're really anxious, what toy should I get for my child? And so the doctors will now say what one of them thought of that I just think needs to be a billboard, that there are only two really important toys for your baby, and they are your face and your voice. And that's just so wonderful to think about that message going to all families, because people don't know. They just don't know.
Right, Bridget, and that you just alluded to the basic question. The Family Reading Partnership has done a tremendous amount of work for how many years, Bridget?
16.
Right, 16 years. So what is different between this program and what you have been doing? And I guess you just alluded to it. More books earlier. Can you just expand a little bit on what's different?
Yes. So if you think about a culture of literacy, that books would be woven through our community as we had imagined, that is happening. We're giving out books at doctors' offices and all of that. But when books are in a home, it doesn't ensure that someone will read them to a child. We know how familial this is. If you've had those experiences when you're young, you don't think, will you read to your child or won't you? You do. When my son crawled off my lap again and again and again, I didn't say he doesn't like books. I said, I'll wait till another time. And it's not that someone taught me that. I just knew I'll wait till another time. But if you don't have the comfort and confidence, you think, I'm doing it wrong. My child doesn't like it. So there's a lot of additional modeling and support. One of the things I brought with me is we've had read-along songs that have gone, that John Simon and Cal Walker and books have gone to 3-year-olds in pre-K. Now we're just rolling out read-along love songs for baby. And there are 5 books, and John and Cal sing and read these lovely songs that will surround babies with an abundance of words. And what that will do is provide a model for parents. So you'll hear that, and you'll see, oh, I can do that. Or you'll listen to it, and that's going to expectant parents. So an additional piece is we're adding partners who are closer to the home. So those books will go into homes with the moms nurses who reach Medicaid families that are expecting babies. So they go in and do educational visits. They'll now, every single visit, they'll incorporate a piece that's around talking, singing, and reading to baby. So it's deepening and strengthening, I think, Rob, is the best answer to that in a lot of ways. And there'll be more to come.
Excellent. Anything else? Thanks, Bridget, for the update. That's great. We look forward to the kickoff.
Yes.
Oh, Dr. Brown looking for swag at any minute.
If you're going to come all this way, Bridget, leave the button.
T-shirts, buttons, anything. I mean, just, yeah.
And we love your ideas for this round.
And Bridget, the kickoff, remind me again?
It's Friday, January 25th, and it's at 8 o'clock in the morning in the gym.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Bridget.
Glad you're coming.
Will we get another one?
Yes, I'll send you one. And y'all will send you one also.
I have to put it on my calendar, or it doesn't matter.
I hear you.
And while we're passing around buttons to Dr. Brown, I think, Dr. Brown, we're going to talk about
Yes, we are.
where money comes from to make buttons.
Now invite my friend to the table.
I know, I always thought Bridget is so wonderful to follow, although I don't have goodies like Bridget because, you know, I gift of public funds. But, you know, when you have dollars, there we go. You're all good.
We could have buttons, yeah, we could have buttons with GEA with a slash through it or something like that. Is that, could we do that?
I got one for my tooth. Yeah, you'd like that. That's cute.
So budget discussion, and that's a pretty broad topic.
I'm very excited that the students are here to hear this exciting budget discussion. We start off, budget is really, just don't listen to what you've heard. The budget is really perhaps one of the most exciting parts of, I think, all of the workings of the school.
Would you introduce yourself to
I
the
will be happy
students,
to.
just so they know who you are and what
Sure.
you do?
Absolutely. So I'm Amanda Verba, and as of sort of the end of August, I was the new Chief Operations Officer here in Ithaca City School District. So my job is to manage and plan for the budget, give oversight to maintenance and transportation and school nutrition, and to work also with the Dignity Act program to ensure that there are safe and caring school communities in all of our buildings. So those are just one of the, or a few of the many things that I've been asked to do here in the district. Thanks, Chris. Yeah. So Danielle, I have just a very simple PowerPoint ready. We're also going to cover the budget calendar, the proposed budget calendar for 2014-2015 school year. And we're also going to give a proposal for the Budget Advisory Council. So those are sort of the three aspects of the presentation. Today, since this is the first conversation that we're going to be having about the budget, it really is more of a big picture discussion about how things in terms of the process are going for this year, planning for the budget for the 2014-2015 school year, and how we're sort of engaging all of the stakeholders in this process to make sure that we can move forward together so that we have a budget that we can all stand behind and say that this actually is the best way to be able to serve all of the wonderful innovations and all the needs of our young people. And I think that that's one of the major questions that we ask ourselves all the time. It's not always the, well, how much does that cost? But what is the cost if we don't do this? And so I think that those are some of the big questions that we ask ourselves when we're sitting in those meetings and kind of going around. And one of the key features that we really had this year was trying to establish a clear and predictable and transparent process that really had a lot of ability to share with anybody that could potentially be a budget developer or that would need to know. And essentially that's everybody, right? We want to know how our money's being spent. We want to know how we're prioritizing. We want to know the procedures and the protocols that we're using to make sure that it's managed well and that we're allocating the funds appropriately and making sure that when we do allocate those, that we're managing those all the way through to spending that. And then deciding and evaluating, was that worth it and where do we want to go from here? Oftentimes that feels, in the training that I've received, it's sort of almost a kind of behind closed doors. It doesn't feel like it's very open. It doesn't feel like it's often transparent. People have invites to come and take a look at books and, come and talk to the school business official, make an appointment. But what we've really tried to do this year is be actively engaging and using some of the strategies from some participatory budgeting. And Brad and I early on, when I came on board, said, this would be a great idea. And after looking at that, it is a great idea, and it really fits sort of the culture here and the way that we do business. And it's interesting to see the school business office sort of aligning itself with the mission of our school, which is to engage, educate, and empower. So we can go to the next one. The first one, engagement, or the idea of engaging voices around the table. We did things really differently this year. In years past, just so you know, right about this time, we would be inputting spreadsheets that we had received from all the budget developers with minimal conversation, really, with folks. We sort of would send a spreadsheet out with a cover letter, say, please fill this out by this deadline.
What's a budget developer?
A budget developer could be a building level principal, could be a department chair, it could be the chief officers, anybody that really manages a stream of funds, either small or large, depending on all the pots. So in the past, those folks would get a spreadsheet and get a cover letter and ask to be filled out by a deadline, and they'd call with questions typically, but it really wasn't a proactive kind of gathering of information and utilizing that time to really set some priorities and to align with some of the district goals that we have. And so instead of doing sort of the way that we've done business in the past of kind of sending out just these spreadsheets, we actually invited folks to dedicate some time, and we committed ours as well in the school business office. And we have to date conducted 28 budget meetings with budget developers. ranging from a minimum an hour all the way up to sometimes 2 to 2.5 hours. Some principals, even one of the audience, offered to buy us dinner, because we thought we were going to go along. So these are all good things. And I think from those, we've really gleaned some fabulous information. We'll talk about that in the next slide when we get
Amanda,
there.
are those group meetings or are those?
They're not. So our accounts payable person is Angela Jordan, and she's amazing and has been here for many, many years and is an institution of knowledge when it comes to budget development. And she's often the one who does all of the inputting and the managing of those spreadsheets. She's been in the meetings. I've been in the meetings, and then either the building level principal or the department chair or department team leader. And if they wanted somebody to invite, they could bring that too. So, for example, for both transportation and maintenance, they brought their support staff, who are oftentimes the ones doing the purchase orders and managing sort of the dollars in the day-to-day. So the right people were at the table right from the beginning.
So this was, for example, you said transportation. Transportation would come meet with you and a few other people.
Absolutely.
About transportation.
About their budget, specifically their
So
budget.
it wasn't a kind of a collective district-wide 28 budget developers come together and talk. Okay.
We did a launch meeting. The
Okay.
administrative team meeting in December was dedicated solely to budget. And so most of the folks that, were in the room there were part of this 28. And so we launched this idea. We got some buy-in. We did some sort of assessment of this is the way we want to go. Is this the direction we'd like to head? And people seemed to be pretty excited about that at that point in time. Because again, receiving a piece of paper is very different from sort of that engagement, right? Of like, how does this tie into the bigger picture? And so that first meeting was all of the folks in one room. And then after that, we had a clipboard with sign-ins, and people signed up for anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, double blocked. And from early December through now, this week, we've been meeting with every single person that would have their hands in a budget in some way.
When you met, like with each principal, which, was it particularly just about their school budget or how their school budget fit into the district budget so that they understood the complexity of their school with the other?
Right, so since this is, it's not that it's early in the process, but imagine this is like sort of a phasing out, right? So this is phase one. So phase one, when we have this first meeting, it's specifically about their building budget, not including staffing at this point. Because staffing, you can imagine, this is a larger picture, larger discussion that we don't have all of the drivers yet for the district budget in place. We don't have all the state aid numbers, the fund balance projections, the tax levy. We don't know those pieces yet, so those would drive those discussions. So staffing typically happens more in a February time frame.
Okay.
This time it's more about sort of their equipment budget, their extended day. That was probably a little bit of the staffing pieces, but more of just kind of that programmatic. Their supplies, their contractual costs that they might have outside of their building, so if it's something with the BOCEs. But those conversations, one of us was taking notes, the other was just sort of filling in spreadsheets and talking through. We got a lot of information from that about what directions we needed to go to clarify what a building level principal is in the driver's seat about and what they need to be in autopilot about. So we've been using that analogy a lot. There's a lot of like district level decisions that you just have to accept as I don't have control of that. That's a, professional development for district-wide is a good example, right? That's just something I have input, but really the money is at a district level pot that's probably, in Lori's budget or Matt's budget, where in their building, they have very specific things that they are in the driver's seat.
Okay, so they're giving you, let's say, what they have this year for supplies.
Yep.
Are they giving you their wish list? Okay.
Yes. And so, of course, there's always that, that little bit of information that you give when those wish lists come in of saying, we would love to be able to fill everything that comes on those wish lists. That's where, again, when people are part of this budget process, those determinations of what really is the priority in terms of meeting the district's goals for the 2014-2015 school year, or perhaps the year after that, or the year after that. I think you can't ever really work in one vacuum. So some things that maybe on the wish list could be filled easily this year, some are intentionally prioritized prioritized for the year after, because that would fit into the district plan. Some, we might say, you know what, you don't even have to, I'm glad you requested that, now we know this, but that's already being taken care of by, let's say, the technology department. That's on their radar, and they're the ones that are going to be putting funds toward that. So those conversations wouldn't have happened if we didn't bring folks together on it.
Okay, and there's equity, yes, before.
So, right. So some of these things are rooted in formula based on sort of a per pupil rate,
Okay.
right? And those have been either passed down, and I think that's why it's really good to kind of look at the demography, not just for projection, but also currently, are we really sort of making sure that there is equity in the buildings? So all of that is part of a bigger picture that I think we sort of here in central office are looking at to say, how are we going to do this budget planning process truly year-wide to make those sorts of determinations and those protocols?
Because our policy tonight is that question. Okay.
When you had your meetings with the budget developers, how did you encourage or how have you found them to encourage them to develop creative ways to budget or different ways to budget? And the example is what Jared Powers did at the high school, where he restructured some of the ways we had been dealing with attendance. I mean, how do you encourage these 28 not to just come back and say, last year we did it this way, and update it with a 2% raise on what you did last year? I mean, really restructuring ways of scheduling, ideas, staffing. How do you get those conversations happening when you have these budget developer meetings? And
So some of those conversations, to have that individually at that time when you were talking about the building level budget, that meeting may not have been the best time to do it, because I was only one voice in that room along with Angela. That kind of level of conversation in terms of the creativity around finding your funding and allocating and sort of looking at your budget as sort of a creative landscape that you can sort of craft. Those are really, we've already committed time in a lot of both the secondary and elementary level meetings to do those sorts of conversations, to have those sorts of conversations. We're hosting specific strategic budget level conversations that are happening every other week with some of the folks in this building, along with some of the master educators and building level principals, and we're really sort of delving into exactly what they're talking about. Because I think if you're not encouraged to do that, or you don't even maybe know how to, or you don't know what your parameters are to be able to be a creative thinker, right? Then we really talked a lot about that, about not wanting to put sort of the brakes on somebody who's really thinking outside the box. So a lot of the time has been spent around what can we actually encourage folks to do? How can they creatively think within this so that there's not disappointment come February, March, April, right? So it's a delicate balance that I think we have.
And I would add this because we're holding ourselves accountable for it also. The Board of Education priority that speaks to efficiencies, we now have a metric in place that speaks to each department will identify at least 10 ways to be innovative with their budget, or use the resources effectively and efficiently. So we've had principals submit plans, and I think we have almost all of them in now, where they have listed 10 things they did differently this year. And we anticipate them having a similar document handed in next year, where they're listing 10 things they did differently and innovatively with their budgets going forward.
It is a different strategy than we are talking budget, so we may speak openly. In the past, Dr. Brown, as opposed to that strategy, that letter probably went out from the business office and to the budget makers, budget developers. I want a spreadsheet with a 5% cut and a 10% cut. And we talked about the gap elimination adjustment coming up with, $4 or $5 million in cuts that we had to make. So that probably drove a conversation, which is not a very engaging conversation when it is presented that way. But to look for innovative ways to do more with less, so do more with same, or spend differently, reprioritize how we spend over $100 million a year. That's probably a good thing to do, rather than a letter going out diplomatic, correct?
And I think through conversation too, you can also ask questions like, are we doing this the most efficiently, right? Is there something on here that you're doing that you're not invested in, right? I mean, are there funds that you could be either moving to somewhere else that you'd really like to say, I need more funding here, but this has really been a program that we sort of aged out of, or that we sort of, advanced out of. So those came through more of a conversation than it was a here's your column, your 5% cut column, and your 10% cut.
Right, exactly.
Project.
Go ahead.
Are there some issues or some directions or even some physical manipulation of spaces that you guys have already determined are important and want to see happen in the building? So how does that conversation go with you? When at this level, we know there's some things that could work well, but we're dealing with the people with whom we've given the responsibility. How do we negotiate that in this new, cooler budget world?
Well, I think any good change model will tell you, right, that this is not going to be the most comfortable process all the time. So luckily, I'm an optimist by nature, but I'm a realist every day of the week. So I am very grounded in the fact that stylistically, this could feel very challenging or different or new or to a lot of folks. I have to tell you, the majority of people that came, even though they said, I know this, ended up spending their full hour with us and really were able to sort of plow through all the questions. As far as, I think you also asked sort of a question of like the bigger picture in terms of kind of the visioning, I guess, around it. I want to make sure that I got that. I think that, we talk very openly about visioning for all different things, whether it be programmatic visioning, staffing visioning, facilities visioning, maintenance visioning, what we're going to do this year and the next year. Are we gearing up for additional monies that are going to be needed in this, the form of a bond project? What will that look like? This year, being new, being with this change, knowing that we have the gap elimination that has been there, I think that there are certain things that are just inherent in this budget that we want to make sure that I don't think that there's going to be any big, new, exciting projects this year. We're in the phase right now of strategizing for that to come. And I think to do it well, it takes time. That innovation and that idea of planning for the future takes a little bit of time. And I think sometimes we cheat ourselves when we move too quickly on it.
If I can add, well, first, I think that was the first time you've had a chance to answer one of Elder's questions. You did a pretty good job.
I did.
It was a two-part question. It was rhetorical, and you still answered it. But I think now we're now in.
I'm not saying anything.
We have a vision and mission now. I mean, I think your question, if I'm understanding correctly, you were asking about some central level of priorities we want our buildings to adjust their budgets to support or to do. We spent a lot of time talking about vision and mission now. And I'm one of those 28 budget developers. While I'm the ultimate budget developer, I've been reduced down to managing a superintendent's budget, and I've gone through the same process as Jared and Mary as well. And so she's coming in with me and saying, here's the vision and mission. We've had many conversations as a team, and we have a great team now that's bought into the vision and mission. How are you building a budget to support that? So there have been some things in the innovation grant, some things with supplies that I've had to not do, and some things we're going to do next year to support the vision around engagement and empowerment that I hadn't thought about before. Some things with superintendent's student advisory committee we're going to do differently. Some things with some other committees we're going to do differently. And I've seen some of the work that's coming out of the high school. I've met with Jared, some things he's going to do already. They really aren't budget related, but they're student related, that they're supporting our vision and mission that I think are coming out of this process that has shifted. So I hope I'm helping answer that. Well, you did a great job of answering that. I'm just providing a little bit of history and how I'm seeing some shifts take place.
I mean, one specific thing that comes to mind is the innovative classroom, right?
Sure.
The concrete experimental classroom that has budget implications because the desks are different, the seats are different. And obviously, we could talk beyond that. There's one example of something that that sounds exciting. How do we light that fire and spread the seed
Right.
throughout our budget process?
If we go to the next slide, that I think will speak to it pretty nicely. As you can see there, the second to last one is the innovative learning space. Is exactly what you're talking about.
Bobby?
Right, so this educate, I put this on this slide because essentially during this time, it's also a good method for us to sort of get a finger on the pulse of sort of how principals and other budget developers are feeling about some of the really amazing ideas and vision that we have, right, as a district. And some of the things kept popping up of, again, this idea of either, when we kept using the autopilot driver seat, but, how much input, how much control, how are you going to roll this out? What's your plan? Is it all going to happen next year? How do you choose? When you do choose, how do you get that communicated so that nobody feels slighted, right? So all of that came up in these meetings, and then that message then was delivered back to the the district team here in this building, whether it be through the strategic meetings or through our administrative level team. And it has led to just phenomenal conversations for us and our practice and our, ideals around how do we roll these things out in a way that everybody feels like there's equity, right? Everybody feels that there's balance and that we have the money for it. I mean, that's the bottom line. These phenomenal ideas, there is some sort of price tag that goes along with them. And so it's the balance of what is it going to cost? Where are we going to get those funds? How are we going to evaluate where that is prioritized? And what's the cost if we don't do it?
I don't think folks realize we purchased enough equipment to furnish about 8 to 10 classrooms per year anyway. That's just a line item in our budget. And what we've done is we purchased the same furniture year after year after year and swapped it out. And this year we finally said, does that type of furniture support our mission and vision? And we decided that it didn't. So we said we won't purchase regular desks and chairs anymore. And this is what we're going to purchase. So what you're hearing from folks, I want more chairs like that. How do we get those chairs? It came from the same budget line we've had for the last 20 plus years. But it seems all of a sudden we had an innovation grant of some sort to support this new way of thinking. But it's more in line with what we already had. Same money, but supporting our vision and mission.
Are we getting bouncy chairs in here sometime?
You asked, I'll put that down on the list.
These chairs are fairly new, I think.
We just got these.
So we can get the last slide.
Go ahead.
For Empower. Clearly, you can tell already that we're trying to use more of a systems thinking approach, which is one of the goals that we really had, especially after the board development session. We really want to take a look at the way that we think about how we do business here. And
What's
so
systems thinking mean?
Systems thinking, to me, my definition, and I can only give you my definition, is that what you do is you take in this larger organization, the way that we do business, and you break it down into processes and smaller parts, and then you look at how those sort of imagine how the inner workings of a clock, how they all work together. That's my definition, but it could be very different from somebody else's definition.
Very metacognition.
It's, right, I could define that
So
too.
principal.
Oh, wait a minute. Dr. Brown, say that word again. No, you know.
It was very metacognitive.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. You need to take a more metacognitive approach to this.
Ooh, Chris did very nice, Chris. I like
I
that.
like your gears. Your gears.
So what the heck does that mean?
That's how I'm a visual person, so. And I don't know if.
And the definition is on the wall. The systems thinking, when we refer to it as a team, we often talk about the metrics we have in place to produce the kind of the results we want that tie back to the mission and vision. So we can do that.
So like what Judy said before, kind of the system thinking is that the budget developer is thinking of his or her department or building
In the bigger
context
picture.
of that. So it's not
Right. No
getting mind
siloing,
kind of-
no isolation.
Making decisions in a vacuum.
I
Right.
can understand.
So how, their decisions impact
Okay.
because at some point in
That's
time-
new, right? That's kind of a different way of.
in the school business office, I don't know if I think this is the first year we're really trying to align that our business and the way that we do our work with the way the school has been moving. And it makes logical sense to me to be able to pull those two things together.
We are Wegmans. I mean, in educational institutions, it takes some time to get the kind of thinking in place. When we started with our strategic plan 3 years ago, vision and mission, we put the metrics in place. Now we're putting in place strategies that are allowing us to do all of that. So it just takes some time to get it in place. I'm sorry to drop that Wegmans.
I was just smiling. I get jabbed, but no, I actually want to commend you because anytime I hear, well, this is how we've always done it, I cringe. And to hear that we're aligning things with what our priorities are, you know, it makes sense. But I realize it's a paradigm shift. So, I think a lot of folks are talking, there'll be catch up. But also, when we align, you said some key things to me because things will have to drop off because we're using energy and resources towards things that don't work anymore. And we've heard time and time again that, we hold on to our old habits, whether they're good or bad. So while that will take time, we're really moving in the right direction. And yes, for me, that's kind of ingrained that you align your resources with the direction you want to go and use them as efficiently as possible. Unfortunately, the school district, that's not been, or any school district, that's not how things have worked. And, not to criticize, that's just a statement.
Or many organizations.
Many organizations,
Right.
yeah. So, not to paraphrase what you're saying, but to say it speaks well to me. And it makes sense. It's metacognitive as well.
I still don't know what that means.
Since you're changing, what am I supposed to do, or what is a board supposed to do, or what's our role in this new approach? I mean, how does our role change in this if we're asking the 28 budget developers we have to do something different as well? I imagine. What are we doing at this table to engage with this process in the most effective way, different than what we've done before? Kind of the thumbs up, thumbs down thing was fun, but
Right. Well, I think you started with the board development session.
Well, no, we started by laying out the vision, the mission, and
That's right.
the parameters,
so we're done.
the measures.
But
The metrics. Well, no, we're still gonna put a number ultimately
Absolutely.
on it and ask
This is
our
not going
budget
right.
developers, how far toward the mission can you get
With
the budget number you're given?
Yeah.
And every work session has included a budget conversation. I mean, everything from instructional coaching to the implementation of Singapore mathematics has had budget implications. So it's been ongoing.
So my question was, what do we have to do differently? I mean, if we're saying we're doing everything great, and we've already taken the steps to change what we need to as a board. What I'm trying to figure out is, I'm happy that I've seen the change from how it used to be,
Right.
but I'd like to grow us even further. Right now where we are, forget about what we've done, forget about to engage this year's process. How do we get better? What do we
Right.
need
Let me
to
get
do?
back to take a shot at
Please,
this.
yes.
The last work session was a work session we had. This room set up was in a big circle where it was teacher, administrator, board members. That, from my perspective, is unprecedented. It's been my career, really. Where we have that many different levels of educators having a deep conversation about teaching and learning with major budget implications. I mean, I've already seen on Twitter some folks asking, how can a teacher have impact or say in the budget process? Well, from my perspective, that was a big say in the budget process. In every work session we've had teachers at that table, administrators at the table, and you engaging in conversations about the work that's going to support the vision and mission, and they've all had major budget implications. That's different. I mean, we started the work session format alone just a year and a half ago. And I'm getting emails from colleagues right now about work sessions. How do you structure that for a board with staff at the same time to talk about budget? So I know sometimes it doesn't feel like that, because you're not talking $100+ million each time. But these are major budget conversations that are different that we're having right now.
And I also, to me, this is, again, I think in phases, because otherwise I'd be overwhelmed if I have to feel like, if I can't possibly do all of the change that we want to have occur in year one, right? So I think for me to be able to sit through the board development session and to hear where everybody wanted to go, and then think about how we might then have that feedback loop sort of back and forth. I'd hate to think that that's the only opportunity that I get to hear from the board as to what your priorities are. I know we meet monthly in Finance and Facilities Committee. I think those meetings have sort of I think they've changed. I think they've become, I mean, again, I'm only speaking from sort of the folks that come to the table, but I think that those have really changed in terms of this kind of more of a conversation, less of a report, right? Come and listen to the report. We're setting up the strategic or the budget advisory council. I would love to be able to have some board members be able to sit on that and be a part of that if that's possible. I would, in phase 2 and phase 3, I think that's, and when I say that, I mean like next year and then the year after. I'd love to be able to think about how we're connecting with teachers, but also with students. We're missing the student voice in all of this. You know, I'd love to hear their perspective about what their priorities are. And it doesn't have to be that I host another meeting. There's a lot of ways to be able to get that information. So I think board, staff, teachers, students, parents, community members, there's some really wonderful things that we've done in years past to gather information, but I think we can build on that and look at, be very intentional about how we're going to do those. But I you know, to say that I can do that all in year one, I think that I would not be able to do all of it prior to the law.
To answer Seth's question for me, what I would like, how we can do something or how I can do something is to understand and know what those changes are. Okay, so the budget developers, what are we using more of next year's budget to drive our priorities forward, and what am I dropping off? So that's what I need to know, what that looks like. Okay, so we're going to spend X amount of dollars towards Singapore math to achieve this score, and I'm not going to use this anymore. So we know, and it's just a bullet pointed nuts and bolts type of operation. That works for me. I can't speak for everybody else.
What, I don't want to say what number, but our budget is 111. Okay. Are we looking to maintain, to increase? I hope we're not looking to go the other way. And what is, like I'm pre-K. Let's say I want 2 more pre-Ks, which I do. What is hampering me or the district besides money? I know, to get, yeah, so
Space,
money.
personnel.
Space,
yeah.
facilities, right. I mean, yeah.
Is there anything hampering maintaining?
Anything hampering maintaining?
Yeah.
What we're doing now.
What we're doing now.
Well, we have no sense of what the gavel, the DA is going to
What
do
the
this year.
state's going to do.
Yeah, we don't.
We have no real feeling for where they're headed at this point. There was no hint in the governor's state of the state. He said he wanted universal pre-K. As you know, I keep asking what's the definition of universal. I have a different definition, I think, than the governor does. And he also didn't say where he was going to come up with the money for that.
Right.
I mean, I think, Dr. Brown, correct me if I'm wrong, we'd be ready for universal pre-K if the state said, we're going to add it to your aid package. I think we'd be ready for it. We'd figure it out.
With a clear definition of what universal means.
Well, clear definition of universal. I don't know where that is yet, whether it's 200 times poverty level, 400, 4 times the poverty level. I don't know what the definition of universal is yet. When he says universal, he doesn't mean every 4-year-old.
No, he doesn't. But I'm just, having been part of past budgets and stuff, we were told, either we're trying to maintain, we have to cut, or that kind of thing.
I don't think, I think, Judy, I think
Trying to change the language.
No, not really, not at all. Numbers are reality. We know the tax levy limit is likely to be less than 2% because inflation was less than 2%, and that is the number that they will use. It is not, we talk about a 2% world, it's going to be less than a 2% world because inflation is still...
Except we didn't go to the max the last 2 years, so we actually have the ability to go over the number this year.
Oh, no, right, exactly. And so there's a lot of numbers that are going to have to come into play. And you know, eventually we do have to go to the voters for the local share. And really that really will determine how much we maintain and how much we want to add. Dr. Brown, when we talk about our workshops, and it's I always get the impression that the budget, just how did you phrase it, Dr. Brown? It was those are additions to the budget. It's going to cost more to do these things, not less to do what we want to do. So I mean that's very clear because we do not talk numbers. What is it going to cost to double the instructional coaching model to do whatever?
What do we stop doing?
Right. What do we stop doing? So.
I just want to know, should I be worried or not?
About
Sure, always.
I should always be
We
worried.
have always, that's my job.
We have
There's certainly, from what I heard from the governor and the Assembly and the Senate, they will be looking to add to state aid. I mean, I would anticipate state aid that core funding from the state will increase, not decrease. But I don't know anyone's talking about eliminating that total bogey that they have out there on this district and all other districts in the state.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I think to try and answer Judy's question, and yeah, you should always worry. We don't know where the state is, and they're a big player here, especially with the gap elimination. They're a bigger player. But I think if I'm understanding what Dr. Brown and the executive team are doing, they're creating a system where they know what they need to do to deliver on the priorities. And Amanda's job is to put a number to that. And then when we tell her the resources are there, go ahead and buy all those things, or oops, where the resources aren't all there, the team's already been through the process and then can back off from there which priority, which target item, so that we don't get down in the weeds of which positions and which items and so forth. Instead, these folks, the 28 budget makers, have already been through a process of what they need to do to get to the priorities. If we can't fund them all, they've already probably laid them out in somewhat of a priority order among themselves and can back off of those if necessary. If I overstated, I think that's what we're trying, if I understand what we're trying to do here, so that you and I don't get in the weeds on this position or that position here or there, but we're still in the weeds as far as, the gap elimination is $3,355,000, and it's only going to be reduced to $3 million. And therefore, where do we go from there? Remember, it's 18 million over 4 years. We had federal money that made up about half of that, in round numbers, that made up about half of that, and we had reserves that made up the other half. We have so far put our finger in the dike on our own. We're going to reach the end of that pretty soon, and that's why that gap elimination needs to be eliminated. So the folks at home understand what happens there. The state merrily increases our aid, the formula, every year. Tells you your by formula and so forth.
According to state law.
According to state law, it goes up X amount. Oh, but by the way, when all of the aids are added up, the lottery aid and the foundation aid and the transportation aid and the BOCES aid and so forth, they're all added up. They come to a number, and then last year they said, oops, but we're going to send you $3,355,000 less. That's how it works.
Be happy with it because we're still sending you money.
Yeah, and that's
That looks like
so that's why it's very hard from a budget standpoint to predict where you're going to be. I know what the state's aid formula is, and Amanda can tell me what 1% or 2% 4% addition in foundation aid is going to mean, and 4% in transportation aid, or whatever. We can
run those reports.
got that pretty easy. It's what are they going to take away at the end? That's what was introduced 4 years ago, and has made it difficult for us and made it impossible for some of our neighbors.
Difficult for us because we are blessed as a district because 70, how much percent?
Yeah, 70% of our
Essentially 70%.
local taxpayers.
Right. The local taxpayers support 70% of the cost of doing business for this district, whereas some districts are in the 90% state supported range. So we still determine our fate, Dr. Brown. We have control over the future of the district, not the state of New York. And that's...
I mean, to put it in
that's how-
perspective, some of our neighbors can raise the tax levy 1%, and it's not enough money to hire a teacher. The local tax base is so small, it's not enough. For us, it's $700,000. So it's a different...
So it's always, budget season's always interesting.
Yeah, no, I know.
So you also, in your Dropbox, have the proposed budget calendar for the 2014-2015 with the key dates that will be occurring over from now through May 20th, which is the school budget vote.
And Amanda, during finance committee meetings, obviously we're going to be talking budget that's on the calendar. When will the board start to see projections on the full board on projections regarding fund balance or those metrics that?
So we'll start our conversations this month in finance facilities. And then if you take a look at the calendar, we'll be, I believe the next time we'll be in front of the board is in March, early March.
That'll be the presentation, hopefully.
March 11th.
And the governor's executive budget comes out the end of
No, next week.
January, correct?
No, I think it's next week, isn't it? 21st, did I read?
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Kind of the end of January.
The theme has been sort of diminishing the unknowns.
Yeah,
But there'll
exactly.
still be some.
Oh, well, yeah, who knows what the legislature will do with it once the governor, if they get it, puts it out there.
When's the next finance meeting? I have it in 3 days.
27th.
Okay.
Monday, the 27th at 6 p.m.
Mr. Harris.
I have a question. I have a question. It's going to be easy. But as we go through this process, do you guys think it would be manageable to break out the parts of the budget that are going to be creative and move us forward in new and exciting and innovative ways? In the past, those things seem to either not be emphasized or they get lost in the bigger picture and all of the paper. So we are all satisfied, more than satisfied with the way we've begun to get there. Not do the SOP, but to actually do things differently and to spend money on things differently. Is there a way that we can get those things highlighted in this process?
So last year we shared the innovation grants as one item, and that was close to $800,000 or so. This year we may be able to do innovation grants again, but then also bring in the metrics and the data we're getting from principals and budget developers around the 10 ways they've used their resources effectively and efficiently over the last year, and hope to do it in the upcoming year. Would that be something you think would get to what you want to?
No, partially. I was thinking more like if we're going to focus more on the coaches. We're actually going to build more of an innovative classroom. We're actually going to take big swings and being more creative. We keep talking about, the evolutionary jump, and not just playing around the edges.
So this
Can
will
we
be
see that?
my fourth presentation of the budget, and hopefully this will put the way she's rolling. She may do it this year, but the way we rolled out the presentation, we've begun with the highlights and the initiatives. And we talked about initiatives. The first year we talked about initiatives, and we talked about efficiencies, which some folks call reductions. I anticipate going forward, we will continue to talk about initiatives or highlights that would speak to, I think, the big swings that you're talking about.
Initiatives are a big enough word.
But But I would remind the board and the community, a lot of what we do now isn't necessarily a budget initiative. I'm thinking about the high school, and I'm thinking about some of our other schools that have done some pretty innovative things with staffing, with staff, with their thinking that really didn't have budget implications so much as they did have thinking implications. Everything from policy implications to just reassigning staff to teach different types of courses. We talk about that year-round, which I think it leads to a budget, year-round budget, continuous improvement conversation, but we don't talk about it in budget terms. We may do some of that just to highlight during the budget process because most folks are watching then, but not everything we do that's going to be innovative is going to be part of this, if I'm making sense.
Well, you could pick one.
Sure,
if he,
we will do that.
and, you know, follow it through the budget. So.
Or 6.
Or 6.
One of the most significant changes have been the attendance policy, and that has changed. It's impacted achievement in ways that I couldn't have imagined. And we've done that over the last year and a half, and that was talked about during, I forget the time frame, but it wasn't during the budget window at all. And it has impacted every young person in this room, and it's impacted achievement significantly, and it wasn't a budget initiative.
So there's healthcare and retirement that are important. And I don't know what the plan is or thinking is on that. And then there's also how we fund and satisfy our special education requirements as well that I recall are constantly drivers of really significant parts of our budget. And I like all the new stuff, but you know,
there's some.
And I wonder, you know, how do we get some of this new systems thinking or whatever that's called to some of those areas that, and I know we've been doing some work on that, but just wanted to not really have a question, but just say that if you can focus on that and looking at ways to address some of the budgetary concerns with those two areas that may help us get to the stuff in our vision, you know.
The mandates have not gone away.
No.
I mean, they're still, everything you have pointed to is still there. Huge budget drive.
Absolutely. You know, I sort of adhere to this philosophy. I do my best, but again, that realist part of me comes in, and there are just certain things that I'm not in the driver's seat about. So that's just, we will work through that as much as we can to have integrity of the process that we've committed to. But inherently, there are just certain things that they are what they are.
And the frustration comes in when you are trying to be an innovative systems thinking enterprise, and quite arbitrarily the state will say, okay, your contributions to the retirement system are 12% this year, as opposed to last year they were 5%, or next year maybe it'll be 5% and they were 12% this year. I mean, it's, you know, again, it's out of the district's hands, or and frankly anyone's hands that has to deal with the state of New York. But you have to be innovative, you have to be flexible, and take that into consideration and still build it. It's what you guys do. Yeah. Right? We don't have anything to do with it, so it's all.
That's why you pay.
Yeah, exactly. We're glad to help, though. Bragland.
I'm going to suggest that it's 8:30, and all of these students who are here promised me that if we let them out at 8:30, they'd all go home and study tonight. So I think we should take a 5-minute break, and those students who want to get a signature can get it, and they can go home and study.
And we'll do our resolutions and finish up.
Get that in writing? They promised.
You do need a signature. Have Jay do it.